Greetings, guys and ghouls, and today we are reviewing the 1980s horror movie entitled The Burning. I've been hearing so much about this movie that I just couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to get started on it one day. And last night was the perfect time since at this damn job it's a part-time and seasonal, so I had plenty of time to watch it. So yeah, last night this is what I watched, The Burning, and it's about one night at Camp Blackfoot. I'm Blackfoot. Anyway, several campers pull a prank on Cropsy. Cropsy was like the guy who's like a caretaker or something like that. And so what they did was they was in like the camp site, and they huddled up and they was like plotting. And that's basically when you go inside the cabin, you can hear them talking on the floor discussing what they were gonna do. They were gonna prank him and say, we're gonna get this son of a bitch and all that. And it was like about six guys up, 5 or 6 guys, and they talking about he beat the crap out of somebody, and he beat the crap out of one of them. He did this, did that, and they said we were gonna get him, and when he see this, it's gonna scare the shit out of him. So they went into his room, and they put this like the guy had a match, and he lit the match, and they didn't show what it was. So he placed it down, and then then he ran outside and started tapping on the window with the other guys, and which caught the attention of Cropsy. So he wakes up and he sees whatever it was. It was like a flaming skull or something. It had maggots crawling and worms and crawling out of it. So he gets frantic. He knocks it over on his damn bed instead of just jumping out of bed and running out. That would make perfect sense. Instead, he knocks it on his bed, causing his leg to catch on fire. And then he gets up and starts jumping around and knocks over the gas canister, and that further ignites the fire and burns his ass up, and he started running out, and he tumbles over down a hill and collapses into like a puddle of water. And then the boys was like, oh shit, and then they started taking out, let's go. And then like 5 years later, that's when Cropsy was in like a hospital, and they had this black dude, being an asshole. I ain't going there. This is a review video. I mentioned something similar in a previous video about black people in the medical field. We're not going there. So he starts talking to this new guy and tries to lure him into the hospital room. And he said, this is your first time being here. When you see this guy, you ain't gonna never want to come back. So he was like, oh, I gotta go. No, you got to see this. You got to see this guy. So he lures him into the room, and then, the white guy, he's like standing at the door. He's afraid. So the black guy like opens the curtains, and that's when Cropsy grabs his arm. How dramatic 80s horror. I'm talking about early 80s, not so much like later. I think 84 was like the year when horror movies really went ham, especially it was the first Freddy, Nightmare on Elm Street, and from there that's when horror movies started really like amping it up. But anyway, so he gets released. Cropsy, he gets released. He's in a wheelchair. He said, "Don't worry about getting revenge on." The doctors are telling him, "Don't worry about getting revenge on the campers." And it was an accident, and you're gonna get better. And so, Cropsy, he wasn't hearing that shit. So he had on like his black slacks and black trench coat and a black fedora hat on, and he went on out the door. So the first thing he did was he lures a prostitute off the streets to her apartment, and next thing you know, she sees his face and she flips out, and then he grabs like a pair of scissors that was on the counter, because she was trying to grab it because he had grabbed her neck as she frantically saw his disfigured face. I would too. I mean, if you saw some shit like that. But I mean, I don't treat personally in real life, I don't treat people like that, but this is a horror movie, so that's different. So she tries to get it. He grabs it from her, and he stabs him in the stomach with it. And then in the next scene, it takes place where these people, counselors and campers, are out, outdoor playing softball, and they're practically fucking naked, and like what the fuck. I mean, it's the 80s. They probably do that shit now, but whatever. And like they were playing softball, and one of the girls, what's her name, Tiger, she has to go after the ball, and you can see Cropsy like stalking her as she was looking through the grass and shit trying to find the ball. And then as he's about to stab her with the shears, that's when she's like, I got it, and she runs out. So yeah, it basically, what he been doing is like, he didn't really kill anybody till like later on in the film. He was mostly stalking them, watching them and stuff like that. And then there's a guy named Todd. He's like one of the main counselors, along with a girl named Michelle. And the lady whose name is Michelle, she's actually her name is Leah Aries. When I saw her face, I already knew who she was. She was the lady from Bloodsport. That was fucking Jean-Claude Van Damme in Bloodsport. So yeah, I was like, oh my god, that's her. But yeah, Todd and one of the girls named Sally, she gets starts screaming because somebody was watching her in the shower, and it's Alfred, the guy who's I guess he's the odd, awkward one. He has social anxiety. He doesn't really talk to people. He doesn't know how to really fit in or whatever. Yeah. And he's like, I was just trying to scare her because of her boyfriend named Glazer. Glaze. And that's when Glazer confronts Alfred about it and starts threatening him and shit. And that's when Todd came down and he was like, you know what your problem is. You don't mess with people your own size and shit like that. And yeah, and then at that night, they would, I think they was in like a lunchroom and they were getting lunch. And Todd came in, was like, he told the guys in the camp, he's like, y'all better come on, the girls gonna eat up all the food, we ain't gonna have no lunch or dinner, whatever. So yeah, he gets them in there. And so one of the guys, what's his name, blah 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 blah, was it Woodstock? I think it's Woodstock. He went back into the camper to go get his vitamin C vitamins, and that's when Todd approached, was it Glazer or one of them, and he tells them, don't ever do that shit again, making fun of it, whatever condition he had, because Todd was the one that went back and got Woodstock out of the cabin because I guess he was taking too long or whatever, because they made it seem like Cropsy was the one that was coming in because Cropsy was stalking him, and just when he was about to come in, that's when Todd got Woodstock and he said, you scared the shit out of me. He's like, come on, we gotta get back to the lunchroom. And yeah, so there was another counselor. He told them that they were gonna go to a canoe trip down to the Devil's Creek. So at the campfire, because this gives me like this scene reminds me of, what's his name from Friday the 13th, Paul, that's his name. Remember the scene in Friday the 13th? I can't remember which one it was because and that's my favorite fucking movie. I think it was the second one, when he was around the campfire. He was telling the story about Jason. He sounded like he was basically hypnotized while he was talking about it. And still to this day, we still don't know what happened to Paul. And there's been how many Jasons? Like 10, and nobody knows what happened to Paul. Is he dead or what? How the hell did he get away from Jason when he, because he was wrestling around with him in that cabin when Jason was about to kill what's her name, Jenny, because she was pretending to be his mother. Jason, mother is talking to you. And he was hallucinating and thinking that was his mother talking to him. And when he realized that wasn't his mom, after Jenny moved and revealed his mom's decapitated skull on the like an altar, that's when he struck her with the is it a pickaxe or something like that? Yeah, pickaxe. But yeah, basically Paul was doing the same thing that Todd was doing the same thing that Paul was doing in the Friday the 13th by reminiscing and talking about the story of Cropsy, talking about how he got burned. And you'll find out later on in the movie how and why he knows this story, because spoiler alert, he was one of the campers who set up the prank that got Cropsy burnt up. Yeah. I mean, I knew from when I saw Todd that he was the guy who did it, because it was just something about him. He came off too much like a nice guy. I know I got louder now because I'm very enthused. I'm glad I'm doing reviews now. But I knew within the first 5 minutes of looking at Todd, I was like, I bet he was one of those campers that set the old boy on fire. And come to find out at the end of the movie, he did. He was the one, because he was the last name they called. One of the boys' name was Todd. So if anything in the movie, Todd getting killed would have been justified because he tried to kill Cropsy, even though it was an accident. Yeah, it was justifiable for Cropsy to come after him instead of killing all those other people. Because there was a scene where they were on a raft and that they had created because the rafts had got disengaged and they were like floating in the river, and they decided to make one, and they came across one of the canoes, and that's when Cropsy came out. He came out wielding his shears, and he started like chopping, and he basically turned their ass into chop suey right there in the damn river. I mean, he was cutting and slicing every damn thing. Yeah, that was quite a scene. But and then when Michelle was standing with the other campers, they realized that the canoe was floating and there was nobody. I mean, and then she started wondering like what was going on. She swam to it. That's when she knows one of the limbs of Woodstock, and Woodstock actually came up out of the damn water, all cut up and soaked and shit like that, and scared the crap out of her. That's when the guy, I forgot who it was, Jason Alexander, play one of the characters. I can't think of which one was his Jason Alexander. He was Dave. Yeah. So he tried to swim in and stuff. And there was a scene where Glaze and Sally was trying to have sex, and he was bragging about how good it was gonna be, and next thing you know, he had like a premature ejaculation, and she was like, "Is that it? Is that it?" He said, "Yeah, I'm sorry. I promise next time it'll be better." And so his stupid ass gonna sit up there and leave. And then which leaves her by herself. Again, this scene reminded me of Jason. Was it wasn't New Blood? I forgot which one is it. It was a scene where the two was making, it was these people, they were in a mental hospital out in the woods. Yeah, in the woods, mental hospital. So in that scene from Jason, the couple, they were fucking out in the woods, and the guy leaves the girl alone in the same scene, very identical to this. She was in a sleeping bag, and she gets killed by shears, just like the girl here. Wow. And I'm like, and then when he come back, and that's when he realized she's dead, uncovering her and shit like that. I mean, in this scene, he didn't realize it. He didn't really get to see if she was dead. That's because in this scene, Cropsy had stabbed him in the fucking neck with the shears, and picked him up and put, basically stabbing him to the tree. And that's what Alfred, he was watching them for some reason. I don't know what his fascination was with those two, Glaze and Sally. I don't know. It wasn't really explained what was his fascination with those two. I guess because he wanted to be big and strong like Glazer or something like that. I'm not really sure. It was just that it wasn't really covered in this movie. But anyway, so that's when Alfred starts taking off and Cropsy was coming after him. But that's when, in that scene, and after that was when Michelle discovered all the dead bodies on the raft. And sorry for saying canoe earlier, but it was a raft. So that's when Alfred went to go get help from Todd, and he was like, Glazer, he's dead. And when they go back, that's when Cropsy cut Todd across his head, not really, but towards the side of his head, and that's when he becomes unconscious for some reason. But and that's when Alfred takes off running, and Cropsy starts going after him, and then he takes him, and then when they've been chasing him for a while, and that's when Michelle, she decided to get on the raft and go back with the other campers back to camp to contact the authorities and stuff. And the guy who's the camp leader, he didn't believe him and stuff, and he was like, "Look at them!" And that's when they finally started. I think she said she contacted the authorities. I can't really remember, but Cropsy was still after Alfred, and then when he finally gets him, he takes him into this abandoned mine shaft and pins him to the wall with the shears. and had a rope tied around his mouth. And that's when Ty finally goes in there, he discovers, Karen's body. Karen was the girl that was with the guy that got killed on the raft named Eddie, because he lured her out into the woods thinking that, they were going to have sex, and she started playing hard to get. She couldn't trust him because, he was a hoe. And then when they got in the water, but they was fucking naked there, so she's like, oh, I don't think I can do it. He was like, get out of my fucking sight. And then when she got out, she knows her clothes were missing. They were like, her panties were on this limb, her socks were on different limbs, her robe was on the ground. By the time she would get her robe, that's when she got throat slashed by Cropsy. That's how she died in the scene. And that was the first kill in that scene. And that's when Eddie, he was swimming around in the water and shit, and then he fell asleep in the woods and tied him. Michelle came and got him, went up to him, and he's like, where's Karen? So now you know what happened to Karen. And he was like, well, I don't know where she went. We got into an argument, and she like left. Maybe she got in the canoe and left. And so yeah, that's what happened to Karen after Todd sees her body. And then Cropsy comes up with like a flamethrower. That's when Todd starts to think about that, that prank, because you knew from the first 5 minutes, if you are familiar with horror movies like I am, within the 5 minutes, the person that's usually more likely to survive is the person that actually did something to the villain. That's the same thing with Freddy, Jason, all of them. So yeah, everybody else get caught in the crossfire because they trying to get to their ass, being affiliated with them. So yeah, he attacks Cropsy and reveals his disfigured face, and as Cropsy is still trying to burn Ty's ass up with that flamethrower, Alfred finally frees himself and stabs Cropsy with the shears, and then they set his ass on fire again, like in the beginning of the movie. And do you guys think he's dead? Absolutely not. This is a horror movie. Of course not. So yeah, they make it their way outside of Michelle, who brought the police, and Cropsy's body burns away. And at the end of the end of the movie, there was another campfire with another group of teenagers and another camp counselor telling the story of Cropsy, and he said, and if you move, you're dead. And that was the end of the movie. What do I think of the movie? It was pretty good. Very, very campy. I see why people wanted me to watch it. Yeah, it was pretty good. I like the new face. I mean, the faces from back then, and most of the people I already knew, like Jason Alexander from Seinfeld, and I think what's the guy who played Woodstock? Fisher Stevens. Yep, I know him too. Holly Hunter. Yeah, it's a lot of familiar faces in it, but because usually when horror movies from back in the day, that's usually how they get their start until they get to like the modern movies of today and television and stuff. They usually were 70s and 80s kid stars and stuff like that. Kevin Bacon, he was in the first Friday the 13th. I don't think when people see that they would have known that was Kevin Bacon, but yeah. And so yeah, it was a good movie. I highly recommend it. Something, if you have like a lineup of slasher movies you want to watch, definitely add that in and watch it. And yeah, it was pretty good, and I will definitely watch it again in the future. So I think this is all I'm gonna say. This video is long enough. I hate when I make long reviews because I can get very, very long-winded. But thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Hopefully we'll have more 80s retro themed reviews in the future. And you guys take care and stay hydrated. Au revoir.